Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt here with Alyx King and Tom Wells. Today is Friday, April the 5th, 2019. It's 8 a.m. in New York, 5 a.m. Los Angeles, 1 p.m. in London. Sydney, Australia is around 12 midnight. But wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And I'm happy that we're back to Friday because Friday is always a funny day. That's whenever we get Alyx and Tom in the same room. And as they were reminding me just before we started the podcast, they really don't need me to do anything except push the buttons. The show is about them. So I'm now going to turn it over to them and see exactly what happens here while I just push the buttons. So I'm going to push some buttons. You guys do some stuff. We'll do a show. Does that sound good to you?
No, it's your guys' show today because you're talking about stuff that you and Alyx work on a lot.
Well, you worked on it too. I mean, we've been tracking all the time that people put in, and you put in a couple hours on this so far. I don't know if you realize that, but and you're getting credit for it too. So, and we're going to give you credit for today.
Sweet,
as well. Yeah,
sweet. I hope I get my degree, my diploma.
Yes, you'll have
out there in the world.
You'll have a degree you'll have a degree in podcast creation. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Nice.
Why not?
I like that.
Yeah.
Can I get a certificate and put it on my wall?
You're one of the doctors who's going to be handing out the degree diplomas, you know.
Sweet.
She's down for that. That's good. So, anyway, I thought we would talk about the fictional podcast, The Grass is Greener, that Alyx and I have been spearheading. And more precisely, we are totally in agreement that any good fictional story is all about the characters first and foremost. I mean, you want to have a good plot, you want to have all the good interplay, you want to have the topics and subtopics, you know, the various threads going on. But ultimately, I think we agree that it's the characters that draw us into fiction. And I'd say that Alyx is particularly credentialed to say this kind of thing because she does a podcast called Spoiler Alert on television programs, right? So that makes you an expert, doesn't it? Right?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So
she's like an
yeah,
authority.
Tom, now who's the expert? What?
Okay, girl. You get out of here, man. Girl, you got it going on. I'm telling you.
So let's get down to the basic here before we analyze our particular fiction show that we're putting together. What makes a good character? I mean, when you think about your favorite movies or your favorite television programs or whatever, favorite novels, maybe even a favorite play, what makes a character that you love and that is universally loved? What is it? How do you know when one character is going to be loved and another one isn't? What do you
They're
guys think?
personable and relatable.
Personable and relatable. Okay, which means what? What makes somebody personable or relatable?
Personable, I mean, you're generally a nice type of person. You got a good personality. You're able to get along with a bunch of people. And relatable means like you're going through situations that could happen to anybody. So everybody can relate.
I think there's also a question of dimensionality, isn't there? Because the more dimensionality a character has, the more different aspects that a person has as a character, the more interesting they are as a character. If a person is just, if a character is just a bad guy, and that's all they are, just a bad guy, they're foiled, but they aren't anything that you can identify with in any way, and they're certainly not likable unless you like being a bad guy.
I mean, you can have a bad guy and have them have good characteristics, like underlining, so it's like, is today the day that he turns good? Let's find out, you know?
Yep.
So that helps too.
That's what I'm calling dimensionality, because he's not black and white. He's got gray area. You know, so
gray area.
He can show you the positive side. He can show you the negative side. And with a lead protagonist, a lead character that you fall in love with, like you said, you really like that person, you identify with them, and so forth. That person also has to have dimensionality.
Yes.
Right? Because you have to have. It's not just. It's not like you're just one thing. It's not like Rocky Balboa, for instance, would not have worked as Rocky if all he was a boxer.
Right.
But he was more than a boxer, and that's what made him interesting.
Right.
Yeah. If he was just a boxer, I mean, which is kind of funny. Sylvester Stallone, particularly with the voice, tried to make him sound like he was just a dumb boxer. But he also portrayed him as more than just a dumb boxer, which was an interesting approach that he took.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or I look at...
That's what made him personable.
That's what made him personable. Yeah, that's right. And I look at the original Star Wars movie. Because I think, that was a sleeper. That was a movie that nobody expected was going to be the hit that it was until it came out, and then it just kind of swept the world. But I think the reason it happened is you had R2-D2, a robot who made little chirps and beep sounds. But the way those chirps and beep sounds worked, he sounded like he had a personality.
Yeah.
And then you had C-3PO, who was his alter ego in a sense, who was afraid that things were always going to go bad. Everything was going to be bad. And R2-D2 just kind of ignored him and went on with his stuff. He just, I'm not buying into that stuff.
He was vibrating on a whole different level.
A completely different level, yep. Yeah. And all of them. I mean, Luke Skywalker. Luke, I think, was the easy person to identify with because everybody, I think, can remember, as they're coming of age and trying to figure out what to do with their life. They want to do something that they really would love and that would be really fun, but they don't necessarily know what it is. They just feel like they want to do that. So seeing Luke go through all that, you can identify with that. It's like, yeah, I mean, I can see how, I don't necessarily want to go out and save the galaxy, but I can see how somebody might want that. And I could root for him as he's doing it,
Yep.
Better him than me in the X-Wing going after that little hole that was a meter wide and a meter high, trying to hit the target at 50,000 miles an hour.
But don't we all want to save the galaxy? And that's what makes it relatable.
I think on some level, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's it. So there's personable and there's relatable, and relatable implies dimensionality. What else is there? What else makes characters
idiosyncratic?
Idiosyncrasies, such as
that interest in their personalities. In other words, there's something about them that's somewhat eccentric or somewhat, they're authentically unique in the way they express themselves. They have something that they obviously are hooked into or love about themselves or hate about themselves, that they continually show up with those traits that just like you just know that character is going to do that. I think of The Office, and how much I love that show, and how every single character on The Office has got something really strange about them, that makes them endearing, just the way they look when they make a comment, they look at the camera or the way that the stuff they'll say, is just so much what no one else in the office would do it that way, would say it that way, would act that way, but it makes it what's so endearing about that character.
Yeah,
their idiosyncratic way of expressing.
That's true. I mean, that's what R2-D2 was. I mean, talk about idiosyncratic. His idiosyncrasy was that he spoke in beeps and chirps. That was pretty strange. But it was cute.
Yeah.
Or the Chinese guy in Ocean's 11. The guy who was like the acrobat. He would talk to somebody. He would talk to the entire team in Chinese, and they all understood what he was talking about.
That was my favorite part because George Clooney was just talking back and forth to him it was no problem.
Exactly. Everybody understood except the audience.
Oh man, good movie. Good movie.
Yeah, that was one of the funnest, silliest movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, the sequels not so much.
The sequels weren't so good. They were okay, but they weren't all that wonderful.
Ocean's 8 was pretty good, actually. The female cast. It wasn't as good as the original, but I liked it.
Louise's complaint about Ocean's 8 was that it didn't have the energy level. And I think it's because of the music. I think the music just didn't work as well.
Yeah, it wasn't as suspenseful as the other ones.
Exactly. Yeah. So.
They were too slick and too smooth that it wasn't high risk enough.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So that raises the question, how much did you believe the characters? Because you liked the movie, apparently, but how much did you believe in those characters as characters? How real did they seem to you?
They seem pretty legit to me.
Okay.
Yeah. I liked everyone's backstory and how it came into play or why they were doing what they were doing. And yeah, that's another thing. The reasons why the character
Right.
are the way they are. In I think you kind of touched on that with idiosyncrasies, Tom, and why they're in the situation of where they're in, where they came from and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that as one of the key ones too, right before you said it. And I was thinking if you put Donald Trump into a sitcom, like you could actually maybe like him once you knew that he's just like that, And of course, if he was in a position where he couldn't cause real trouble, but just like look at this guy, Can you believe this guy? Maybe, you could. I mean, some people really, really like him. I mean, and I'm not saying that our audience doesn't. I'm just saying that it's hard. It's been hard for me.
To each their own.
I personally agree with you. I think after we go through the Trump era and we're like 10 or 20 years beyond that and people look back, I think people are going to look at it kind of like a sitcom in some ways because a lot of it is kind of ludicrous. I mean, just the interplay.
It's so laughable.
I mean, so much of it is just right out of a slapstick movie. It's just crazy.
Completely.
I mean, that's what happens when you make a reality star president. I mean, it becomes a sitcom. What did you think was going to happen, guys?
Can you imagine if you make the housewives the cabinet? Take any of the housewives, Orange County, New Jersey, I don't care.
Oh my God.
That alone would make a good movie.
Yeah.
Just watching all the different ways that you basically turn the government into a laughingstock.
So another thing I was going to bring up about characteristics and characters in general. There's also, speaking of the housewives, there's also the reality show side of it. And so what do you like about these characters? And then it's like, it's not so much I like them. It's like they're so dumb. I have to know what they're going to do next.
Well, here's a question for you. If they're so dumb, why are they so well off?
I mean, I don't know. Some people have book smarts and no street smarts, you know what I mean? That type of dynamic. So maybe that's what it is. They're good in business, but when it comes to like, I don't know, having a conversation without flipping over a table, they just can't handle it.
Well, actually, I saw a conversation on Facebook along this line. I think they were talking about, what's his name? The mixed martial artist, Conor McGregor. And the question that was raised was, how can somebody who vibrates on such a low level attract all these great things into his life? How is that possible?
He is an amazing man. He really is. Like, if you sit down and watch his interviews, like all the negative stuff is all a character that he plays. Mm-hmm. So it's, he's doing it for the showmanship. It's like wrestling characters, how they're talking smack back to each other, but they're not really like that in real life. Yeah. Like I saw an interview with him and Jimmy Fallon, and he's talking about this, whiskey that he just created, and he takes, a portion of his profits and gives it back to District 12, which is where was it District 12 or something 12 in Ireland where he grew up. Mm-hmm. And the plumbers union that he was a part of before he became a boxer, he gives back to them. Mm-hmm. And he just does so many amazing things. And it's like, but those are the things you don't hear about unless you like the person enough to watch their interviews on other things. Other than that, again, all you see him doing is flipping over a table and punching people in the face.
Right.
So.
Exactly. Yeah. And this whole idea of creating characters to do nonfiction stuff is more common than I think people realize. For instance, I've heard numerous reports. In fact, Joel actually told me about somebody. Joel knows somebody who knows Rush Limbaugh. And according to what Joel heard from his friend, the Rush Limbaugh we see on television is nothing like the real person in real life. Mm-hmm. It's completely an act. Same thing with, who was the other person? Alex Jones, the conspiracy guy. The conspiracy
I don't know
theorist.
him.
He's the one who said that Sandy Hook never happened. He said he says a lot of stuff like that. He's very controversial.
Come on.
Very over the edge, yeah. And he got sued.
There's a whole documentary to prove that it never happened, and it's super believable.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And
okay, well, I know people who were involved, and I take offense to that.
I live near Sandy Hook. I mean, I live like an hour away, so don't get me wrong. I'm not on that side of the fence. And interestingly enough, he was sued. Alyx Jones was sued and recently had to be deposed on Sandy Hook. And in his deposition, he said, well, that was just a psychotic episode that I was experiencing. It's a character. He didn't believe all that crap. He was feeding his audience.
He's a clout chaser.
Now, he's also set himself up probably for a pretty big payday to the parents of Sandy Hook, because he's going to get sued for millions on that. But he created a character, you know, and it goes to prove you've got to be careful about the characters you create and how you're using them, because there's a certain degree of responsibility that's involved with that. But nevertheless, he created a very effective character that met what an audience wanted. Not the kind of character you and I want to create necessarily, but certainly he's very good at creating a character. So getting back to my original question, the original question is what makes a character appealing and somebody that an audience member wants to attach to. I think we can kind of say that there are a lot of different aspects. There are, you talked about being personable. What was the word? Personable and what?
Personal and relatable.
Relatable, right. We've talked about dimensionality, having different dimensions to them. Basically, we're talking about being a completely rounded character, so that the character seems real in every way. Like you would not be surprised if you saw that character walking down the street. Right?
You wouldn't be surprised if that character was you.
Yeah. In fact, you might, depending on the character, you might want to be that character. So it might be somebody that you're trying to aspire to in some sense.
Yeah.
So with those thoughts in mind, what I'm hoping that you and I can do, maybe not so much on the show, we can do it on the show perhaps, but more as we're working on the script, I think we need to go through that first episode. I've started to do it in my mind. And just ask ourselves, how well-rounded are the characters we presented so far in the first episode? How well are we presenting a complete character in that first episode? Because we've mapped these guys out. Like, we did character sheets on most of them. There are a couple we haven't done sheets on, but the lead ones we've done sheets on. And we've explained what all their characteristics are. But you can't see that when you're listening to the first episode. All you hear is whatever the dialogue is in the first episode.
Right.
So we got to kind of go through and say, okay, well, we created Nance to be like this, with all these different characteristics. How well are we actually presenting that in the first episode? What's missing? What's there? You know, where do we need to round it off a little bit?
That's why I felt like we needed to create the best friend character, so she could remind her of all her idiosyncrasies. You know what I mean?
That's a good idea.
And her choices in life and how they're not the best.
Not really, no.
You don't have a good track record, honey.
And that was a good foil. That was a good device you created with that extra character. Who, by the way, needs to have a character sheet. We don't really have a character sheet on her yet. We got to do that.
I made one. It's at the top. It's because everything's
in
you did make
one?
Order.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That was the first. I made the character sheet before I put her in there.
Oh, cool. Okay. Because I know I also have to make a character sheet on Jen, who runs the office for Nance. We don't have a character sheet on her yet. And
she's going to be important later, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, she's going to have her own characteristics somewhat similar to Lexi, who's the new best friend character.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be fun. And the other thing I've noticed, and I kind of like this, our cast so far is heavily feminine. Have you noticed that?
That's true, because we only have Ron and Miguel.
And MJ.
And MJ. Yeah.
But of those three, two of them haven't even made an appearance yet.
Facts.
Right? Everybody else is female, which is interesting. Yeah. It's good. And it kind of fits the current time, so to speak, because there's a very strong emphasis on the feminine these days. So that's good. I think that's good timing on our part. But
I agree.
So let's make it a point.
Unintentionally intentional.
Unintentionally, yeah, that's good. I like that. So I'm trying to think where do we go with it.
Oh, someone's joining us.
Oh, who's here?
Jacob Adam.
Well, hello, Jacob. Thank you for joining us on the platform. I don't know if you're here to listen or to talk. I'll unmute you in case you want to talk, but if you don't want to, that's okay.
Thank you for joining you. Today is very exciting here, and I would like to share your conversation today. It's just thing to feel me happy.
Oh, that's good.
Great.
Yeah, this is something that we've been developing for a couple months now, and we're getting closer and closer to having this script put together, so that we can start putting a cast together and creating this fiction podcast. But it's also given us the opportunity to talk about character, because character is important. I mean, Jacob, when you see a movie or you see a television show, what makes the character come to life for you? What's the most important thing from your perspective? What are some of your favorite characters?
Characters could be different from one to another, but characters is very, very significant in our lives, and how to know your characters and how to differentiate between characters of people you are dealing with, because when you know your character and the character of people around you, it will give you the opportunity to deal with them easily and how to understand them.
Yeah, they have to be characters that you understand what they're thinking, right? You have to understand what they're thinking and why they're doing what they're doing. Otherwise, you can't identify with them.
Identifying the character is sometimes not easy, but we should understand how to identify the character, and to begin to identify our character at the first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. To understand yourself is not easy, but in my opinion, when you sit with yourself and think about your responses, your emotions, your targets in the life, maybe it indicates your character and how to understand yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, we learn from characters, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very true. Actually, we also have a question from Jason, who typed something into the chat that I think ties into what we're talking about here. Now, he's asking a general law of attraction question, but let's also tie it into what we're talking about with characters. He says, how can I remain in a constant flow state to eliminate creative blocks? And it strikes me that's exactly what characters are trying to figure out all the time. They don't necessarily know they're deliberate creators, so they don't think about it that way. But that's what we're all trying to do. I mean, staying in a constant flow state, what he's really saying there is, how do I stay in a good place? How do I get to a good place? How do I stay in a good place? And every character wants to do that. And the degree to which, well, not every character. Some characters are the really, really bad guys. But most characters want to do that. and the characters who want to do that, they're the ones we identify with. They're the ones we make our own. They're the ones we say, yeah, that's my favorite part of the movie or part of the fiction story, the novel, whatever it is. So that's the bottom line. So let's look at it from the law of attraction perspective. I mean, Tom, I'm going to go to you first. How can we answer Jason's question? How do I remain in constant flow state to eliminate creative blocks?
Well, the way I try to do it is to always turn towards trust that there is a higher love, a higher power that is orchestrating life, and that I can let go to trusting that things are going to be okay one way or the other. And so it's just sort of always know that no matter what's coming up inside myself, it's all part of a greater play. And somehow I can just keep letting go. Just keep letting go. Just keep letting go. Keep trusting. Keep trusting. And no matter what's coming up, like, okay, now I feel really bad, but it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay,
It's going to be all right.
Yeah. just kind of know that, and know that there's a beautiful design to the whole life. It's a learning experience. It's we're in school, you might say. So whatever's coming up, it's part of something much, much greater. And look for the silver lining, or let yourself feel whatever's happening, and know that it's all part of your greater good. So that's kind of what I try to do.
I'd also I'd point Jason to the podcast that I did yesterday with a substitute for Steve Rowell, Ruthie Cohen-Joyner, who came on to talk about tapping. And there are a lot of processes we can do to get ourselves into a better state or to the desired state, and then to stay there. And tapping is one way that a lot of people are very successful with. So give tapping a try, Jason. Give that a shot and see if that one helps you. Like I said, there are lots you can try, but a lot of people have had success with that one, so give it a try. Well, what do you think, Alyx? I mean, what's the answer to Jason's question, and the way, and specifically in the way that it ties into what we're talking about character development? Because again, this is something that all characters go through. They go through one way or another, wanting to have a better life, wanting to experience the good life, and that means staying in that constant flow. And it means, as we know from being deliberate creators, we know that it means eliminating, or at least getting those creative blocks out of the way, so we can do our best creating and get into that happy place. So, how do you answer Jason's question?
I think I agree with Tom that you have to have faith in a higher power and know that things are going to work out the way they're supposed to work out. And so in that way, in that sense, you don't have control, but in a way of asking for things, you do have control. But also, I think every once in a while, you gotta go with your heart. You can't always go with your brain, because your brain can steer you wrong so many times. And your heart was saying something completely different, but you shut that down. So I think you need to, follow your heart. Speaking of characters, I was watching Grey's Anatomy last night, and there's a character on there who stays getting in his own way, especially in relationships. Like, he's jumping from one woman to the other. He's marrying this one, marrying that one, and they're all wrong. And it's like his sister finally shook him and was like, "You're getting in your own way. You don't see the pattern. You need help. You can't do this by yourself." And it's like, so getting help, getting a second opinion may help you with your situation.
I think that's what he did. I mean, he came here and he asked us, how do you do this? So he is getting help. That's a good thing. That's a good point. Sometimes you got to get help.
But also talking to someone like Tom, talking to a life coach, or talking to a therapist, get you on your right path, or help you realize what you want to do with your path.
Which you've done quite a bit of yourself. I mean, you've had plenty of issues you've had to deal with, and you've gotten help. You've gotten a lot of help. And to borrow a phrase,
what do you think, Walt?
To borrow a phrase from, I can't remember which movie it is, the help has helped, I can tell.
The help has helped. Yes, I've come a long, long way.
Yeah. I agree with you guys. I think you've got it nailed. I think the other thing is just remembering that when you're talking about getting into your constant flow state, what you're really doing is focusing on what you want. I mean, in the most basic terms, the reason we end up blocking ourselves is that we spend time focusing on what we don't want. And we spend a lot of time trying to figure out, well, why am I not focusing on what I don't want? And how do I stop focusing on what I don't want? But in one sense, it's just as easy as, well, just focus on what you want. What do you really want? A lot of the time, there are a lot of times that people really don't think through, how do I phrase what it is that I want, without phrasing it in terms of what I don't want.
Oh my God, that's the worst thing for me.
I mean, how many times have I been in conversation with somebody, particularly on Facebook, where I ask them, what is it that they want? And inevitably they tell me, well, I don't want this, or I want this to change.
That wasn't the question.
That's not the question. What do you want? What do you actually want? Can you express it in the positive? And you can almost see the gears turning in the head, right, Tom? I mean, you get this all the time as a coach. You can almost see the gears turning, like, okay, how do I work with this question? Because it's not the way that I'm usually thinking about this kind of thing. I really want to say what I don't want, but there's got to be a loophole here. I just got to find the loophole.
And it's a wonderful way to find the way into what a person wants is to say, well, you know what you don't want. You know, like when you know what you don't want, then as Abraham says, then you're putting into your vortex, into this place, this reservoir of your possibilities, you're putting in the thing you want just by knowing what you don't want. Mm-hmm. So you are on your way.
You are.
There's a huge thing to accepting every moment as whatever's happening is what's meant to be somehow. Mm-hmm. You know, that you can never not be at the right place on your path doing the right thing on some level. Mm-hmm. That's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is.
Really?
Yeah.
So I can never be in the wrong place on my path. And yeah, if you make peace with it and see what happens, you know. That's how to keep in the flow.
Hey, Jacob, I'm getting a lot of wind noise on you, so I'm going to mute your mic. But if you want to volunteer something to be part of the conversation, just put something in the chat saying you got something to say, and I'll unmute you, okay?
Yes, I'm sorry for that noise.
No, it's not your
because
fault.
I'm on the shore right now. Yeah,
Oh, well, that's a really rough life. I'm sorry to hear you're on the shore. That's terrible. No, but it's fine. Perfectly fine. No problem. So, like I said, I'll mute you, and if you want to say something, just put something in the chat, and I'll unmute you. That way we can cut down a little bit on the noise there in the background, so that's good. Let's see, where were we? I lost my train of thought.
We're talking
about what you don't want.
Oh, right, yes.
I was talking, about how if you make peace, always make peace with where you're at.
Mm. Yeah.
Make peace, make peace, make peace. I love that. You know, and accept all the parts of yourself as all having an equal possibility of bringing you a gift. You know, like everything that's coming up has a possibility in it that it's happening for a good reason, that there's something there that's meant to unfold for you, even if it feels difficult right now in this moment. There's something within that you can look for the gift of it. Mm-hmm. It's not easy to do when you're suffering, but it really is there.
That is a good trick too to remember. It's not so much a trick; it's just a method to use when you're wanting to make that shift. When you're wanting to try to identify what it is that you really want, and you're having trouble doing it, well, you can just make peace with what you're already thinking about. Because if you do that, then it's going to be easier to get into, well, what is it that I really want? You're going to be able to answer that question better, I think.
And look at what you already have that you can give
grateful.
value to. Mm-hmm. You know, say, wow, well, how many things are actually working for me already? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then that will attract more of the same.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look
That's what I do when I find out I'm in a difficult situation and I'm like, it's going to be fine, Alex. It's going to be fine. It's always fine. It's always fine. And at least this didn't happen and this didn't happen and it's going to be fine. And I say it out loud, so I'm speaking it into existence. So it's always fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the movie, The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, the quote that they repeat over and over again. Everything will be all right in the end. And if it's not yet all right, then it's not yet the end.
I like that.
Yeah. So another way of saying, be patient and stick with it. You just haven't completed the journey yet. That's all.
Right.
That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
So getting back to character development then, so we've already done a lot to outline what a well-rounded, likable, attachable character is, which is good. We're on the right track there. And we have our work cut out for us, obviously, to make sure we're doing that effectively in the first episode of the series that we're putting together. But how do we also tie into this idea of, have we tied in this idea? Maybe we have to a certain degree. Have we tied in this idea of characters focusing on what they don't want rather than what they want? Or flipping it around, focusing on what they want rather than what they don't want? Because this is also a law of attraction show we're doing here, right? We're trying to set up all these characters in all these really dysfunctional situations, and then we're going to help them learn law of attraction and learn the importance of self-love and focus and all that kind of thing in order to get what they really want out of life. So we've got to figure out, how much are we laying that out in the first episode?
I think we have with, especially with Nance, because her history of having dated another married man, and she's saying, well, that's not what I want, but that's what you ended up with again. So you keep putting it out there.
Yeah, I described to Cindy that was the main theme of what was going on in the first episode. She says, well, there is a law of attraction situation, so it apparently is coming across right.
Okay, good.
Which is very good, yep. We also need to do the same
But I
thing
want
with
it
some
to
of the
come
others.
across to the people who aren't aware of how law of attraction works.
Oh, yeah.
I want them to feel like they're the character and they're going along with the journey. And then when the law of attraction comes in, they're like, oh, there's something I can do about this?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that you just touched on it. You want to go along on the journey with them. In other words, we want our audience to be in that suspended disbelief so effectively that they feel like they're a part of the storyline.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the reasons that you want to have good characters, so that people will attach in that way. Because if you can get people imagining that they're part of that storyline, then that's where social media comes in.
Yes. Yes.
That's where people start sharing the fact that they're enjoying this thing for reasons ABC. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
Now, what characteristics are part of a character that makes you hate them? Like a bad character, like for instance, Ron.
Well, dating somebody when you're married, that will probably piss a lot of people off. So
Yeah, that pretty much gets you every time.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that doesn't put you in most people's good books.
No. Unless you're into that type of thing and you like being a side chick, then those are the type of dudes that you look for. You're looking for someone who's not readily available, so you can have your time and do your own thing and still be in a relationship.
Well, now you're trying to create a white side to Ron, which is a good thing to do. The gray area. You're creating some gray area for him, like trying to give him something that makes it not a completely black, dark, ugly kind of character. That person that
I'm just
everybody
saying
wants to hate.
he gets these women somehow. So it's not all him. It takes two to tango.
Well, that raises an interesting question. Do we want Ron to grow? I mean, up until now, we've talked about him as almost like an initial character who eventually gets thrown away. But does he grow?
Yeah, that's how I feel. But if you want him to stick around and grow.
I'm not saying I do. I'm asking the question. It just occurred to me. That's part of what happens.
Tom, what do you think?
Which one is Ron again?
He's the
Ron
married
is
man.
he's the current boyfriend who's married.
Oh, right. Well, I think everybody should grow. I mean, it just depends on how long you want them in the series, I guess. Mm-hmm. But, if they're going to be there and it's a law of attraction show, then it'd be cool if everybody, because everybody is constantly engaged in law of attraction. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And one of the main ways it shows up in psychological terms is the concept of projection. Mm-hmm. So if you can show how a character is creating their own reality by what they're projecting, it's really, kind of like so, what's the word, ubiquitous. I mean, it's so common that
Ooh,
people...
good word.
She's got another hashtag.
that people are constantly projecting their own reality onto others, and if you could make a show that emphasized how they do that would be really powerful. I think that would be really cool. Mm-hmm. Like if the writers are sitting back there going, okay, how do we show the audience that this character is creating their own reality? How do they come to see it, or how do others obviously see it and they don't?
Yeah, that's
there's
what
a lot
doing.
of that. Oh yeah, they say that you want to find out what you're really like, just ask the three people closest to you what you're really like, and listen, and you'll find out yourself, and you'll be astounded because everybody knows more than you do.
Right. Yes.
What you're up
exactly.
to, the games you're playing with yourself and with other people. Like, oh yeah, well Tom, you do that all the time. I go, do I really? I mean, yeah, duh. You're known for that. And I go, oh, okay. It's pretty funny.
I think that was also my other reasoning for creating the best friend character, because she does that for Nance. Like she's
Points
like
out
that.
things to her.
Exactly. Yeah.
And she strikes me as a character who we can also grow. I mean, that's a character I can see experiencing growth, because you've set her up as being somebody who's single but feeling comfortable in her own skin as a single person. And I can see that developing into a number of different subplots, including she decides at some point she really does want to attract somebody into her life. and she has certain difficulties of her own in doing that, and that becomes a storyline about how she attracted her mate.
Yeah, I feel like she feels like because she's a boss that she doesn't have the time or energy to put into a relationship, and that's why that's her excuse for not putting herself out there. But at the same time, she's all up in Nance's business, you know, trying to help her out.
And Nance is also a boss, which is what's really interesting about that.
Nance is also a boss,
but
but she like, well, they both own their own businesses, so yeah.
So Nance actually could later on return the favor, because right now Lexi's going to be helping Nance get through this horrible crisis that she's in. But later on, we could, you know, in future episodes, we could flip it around so that Lexi is trying to attract somebody running into difficulties, and Nance is the one who urges her to do X, Y, and Z in order to do that. So, flip the roles. So, there's a lot of stuff like that. That really is ultimately what's going to happen episode to episode, is figuring out how the characters grow.
Right.
Because that's how you keep it fresh, right?
That's how you keep it fresh.
And interesting, and, you know, wanting to understand what's going to happen with the next episode, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until you've had 15 years of Supernatural.
Facts. Actual factuals.
So, okay.
Or 15 years of Grey's Anatomy.
That's another one that's been around for a long time, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
It's been around for quite some time.
Mm-hmm. And I think that show has the most character growth.
Why is that?
In my opinion. I just feel like from where the characters started, they started as medical students, and now one of them's the chief of surgery, one of them's the head of the department. Well, all of them are heads of departments and doing surgeries that are getting them, you know, awards and stuff like that. Like just how far they've come, not even just in their jobs, but relationship wise, you know, like the main character, her husband passed away, so she had to deal with that, being pregnant by her dead husband, and there was a lot going on, but
apparently
it's been a bumpy 15 years, let me tell you.
Well, that's life, isn't it? Life is bumpy. Life is never smooth, which is why fiction writers have so much to write about. There's a lot of real world material to draw upon. Now, that also raises one other question that I want to raise, and I'm not sure how to answer this one, so I'll be curious to see what you guys think.
Okay.
One of the things that, if you take a writer's course, or you take a course in college or whatever, if you're learning about writing, one of the first things that many teachers will tell you is write from your own experience. Well, we're writing stuff here, particularly this first episode, that is totally outside of my experience. And I think it's
it's in my experience. That's why.
Well, okay, I guess because of your father, but it's not directly in your experience. I mean, you haven't actually experienced this kind of thing, have you?
Not me personally. I've never dated a married man.
Yeah.
But I based this concept on a friend of a friend who's going through exactly what we're writing about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, you do have... So, in that sense, yes, it is part of your experience because you've talked with your friend and gotten to know what was going on with him or her. And
exactly.
Learn stuff. Yeah. Okay. That's also... I mean, it's a bit of a challenge for me because I'm sure there must be somebody I know who's done that, but I don't know who they are. I can't tell you who they are. I don't really know.
Yeah.
So I'm having to kind of come at it abstractly. I mean, I told you yesterday, before, maybe even during the podcast yesterday morning, how I had, in the middle of the night, awakened and I was thinking about how we had originally ended this first episode, and I realized we needed to have more there. And as I was thinking about that, I was recognizing that I wasn't feeling it. I was just abstractly working through it logically. Does this connect to this? Does this connect to that? Which is the hard way to do things like that. It's much easier when you're just doing it out of your experience because you don't have to think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's much more work doing it that way. And I think we talked previously about how long it takes to write a script, because it does take a lot of time to write a script.
Yes.
But I think that's one of the reasons.
A lot longer than I thought.
That's one of the reasons I think it's so difficult. I think it's probably a lot quicker when you're writing from your own experience, because then it can just kind of flow onto the page. But when you're having to construct it, you have to work it through really carefully. Mm-hmm. And I guess that leads to my question. My question is, I think this is why I'm asking about characters today, and asking us to kind of dive into what makes characters attractive to people. Because I guess I've created a little bit of doubt in my own head about how attractive are our characters to the listening audience we're creating it for, who have not heard it yet.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I guess we won't know the answer to that until we actually put it out there. But
that's true.
But then again, that's also how you hear stories about people who are writing this stuff and who just create, and then they redo, and then they if they're making the movie, they keep shooting the scene over and over again from 50,000 different ways of looking at it, and performing it, and so forth, and then they piece together the ones that they like the most. Yeah. What was that, Tom? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, my question on this particular podcast today is, how attractive is it to your listening audience to watch you and Alyx create this thing? Because for me, it's like you're in a world, the two of you, that I can't really relate that much to because I'm not immersed in it like you are. And and I wonder how many people are watching this podcast going, what are these guys doing? I don't know. I wish they would just make their story and I could watch it, kind of like you just want to get to the end product. Unless you're really immersed, there could be a bunch of people listening who are totally loving this. I don't know. It's just, I just think that for me, it's like, I feel a little bit like a outsider who's sort of just eavesdropping on your guys' process. And part of me just wants to switch the channel, watch something more interesting, that's more, more something that I'm into or something, because you guys are into it. It's your world, but it isn't my world, right at this moment. Unless you find ways to pull me in. And so, I'm just wondering how the audience is perceiving all this.
Well, it's a good question. I mean, and any of the live streamers who want to comment, feel free, because I'd love to hear that. But it also
you don't want to lose your audience now.
Right.
Well, I have to say, I think on some level I feel confident that the audience is going to stick around because most of our shows they like. I mean, no, I don't think anybody likes every show. I would be surprised if everybody likes every show. But I think most people have. Like, for instance, whenever Linda Armstrong, whenever her show comes along, we get this huge spike in listenership. Now, I'm not sure if it's because it's Linda. It's probably partly because it's Linda, or because it's the Friday afternoon show, which means there's an entire weekend for that one to be the most recent show to listen to. Or maybe they just like the topic. I don't really know what it is, but I do know we get that spike every week.
Friday afternoon is a time when a lot of people are done with their week and they're ready to relax a little bit.
Yeah.
Could be that.
And they got time to listen.
On their way home or, doing something where they have time,
But whatever the reason, I mean, they keep coming back, so, we're doing something right. But your question is valid.
I'm just questioning because I'm having that reaction and I wonder if anybody else is.
No,
I had the same question a couple of weeks ago when Walt and I were talking about it. I said, do you think that us talking about the show on the show is going to, what's the word I want to use?
Gauge?
Spoil.
Not gauge, because gauge is what we want. We want to know if they want it or not. But is it diluting?
I say engage.
Oh, engage, yeah.
Is it going to engage your audience?
Well, that too. But I also want to know, is it diluting what's actually going to happen when we actually do the podcast?
Diluting.
Because they're getting all the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, it reminds me of a team of writers of a series for television or something who's letting you watch them create it from the beginning. So it's like a reality show of watch us create all this. And for people that don't have a real interest in all the ins and outs of that and the technicalities of it,
yeah, they just want to watch the show.
It would be a limited audience, because what I get excited about is whenever the conversation turns towards a real issue that affects my life, that I can relate to as, that's a concern that I have right now, and that's maybe a concern the characters have, but now you're going to be talking about it, I don't want to rain on your guys' parade.
No, this is good.
No, you raised valid questions.
And in fact, this kind of ties into what my original purpose for the conversation was, because I'm asking myself, these characters that we're creating, are they really relatable? I'm not saying that they aren't. I'm just asking, are they really relatable? And you made a really important point just now, Tom. You said that no matter what the conversation's about, this is my way of phrasing it, no matter what the conversation's about, it has to be something that you, the listener, cares about.
Right.
So my question is, okay, so what does the listener care about? Because that's what the character has to be about. The character has to be about what the listener cares about. So since now you're in the listener's position right now, Tom, which is good. So you as the listener, what do you care about that our characters can tie into? Because that helps answer the original question.
Ooh, good question.
Well, of course, I care about all those kind of questions like your audience member this morning asked, like, how do I stay in a creative flow? Wasn't that essentially the question?
Yeah.
Well, anything that comes up that has to do with how do you live your life? I mean, that's why we watch all this stuff. It's like because life is such a mystery and an interesting phenomenon that's taking place, and often it's a problem to people. It's a concern, it's a dilemma. How do I work my way through life in a way that I'm finding relief and I'm finding excitement and I'm finding fun and I'm finding that I'm getting what I want and what I need and I'm getting through my problems in effective ways. And, people want all these solutions constantly to be showing up in their lives so that they can feel this joy, this ease, this fun. And so if I turn on a podcast to listen to it in my car when I'm driving, it's got to be something that keeps me engaged. And often you can listen to people talk about all kinds of things that can be engaging if it somehow is just interesting enough, right? So for some people listening to this, listen to you talk about how characters are developed, it could be just they love that and they're really interested in that. I think that the guy that called in that, he seemed to be right there. No, the other gentleman, Jacob. Yeah, he seemed to be pretty into it, pretty present to what was going on in the conversation. More so than I felt I was, so something about it triggered him in that way. So he seemed to be right there until you cut him off.
Well,
because the amount of sound, I know all this mic sound, there's a lot going on
with
his microphone.
Well, you also raised another question.
Has he contacted you back?
He has not put anything into the chat, no, so I'm presuming he's just happy listening, which is fine. But you also raised another interesting question. Does the audience learn from the character?
Of course.
And is that part of what makes a character interesting?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, we're always learning from each other constantly, aren't we?
Yeah. In one way or another, subconsciously or consciously, yes.
So we can define a successful character as one that the audience learns from, because that's a growing character.
Yeah, they learn, like you're watching politics. You can watch all the characters in Congress and the White House and learn something from the way they act and the things they say. You can go, oh my God, I can't believe it. Or otherwise you say, you go girl, you go, watching somebody, who's saying something that's got a lot of principle and, value behind it. I'm really excited. Then hearing somebody that's got the opposite of that, it's also equally weird, but it's interesting. You learn a lot. He's like, God, I never want to be that way.
Right?
Yeah, we do. We compare ourselves to characters, don't we? I like that. I want to be like that, or no, I definitely don't want to be like that. I would like to have that life. I wouldn't have that life.
Or how could that person be like that? I mean, what's their background like that they could act like? Or how in this moment could they even say that? I really get how that person feels that way. That's so right on. Oh my God, it just cracks me up. Watching Stephen Colbert at night when he does his monologue about Trump, it just cracks me up because he sees things in such cool ways, like how he really gets the absurdity of some of the things that are happening. And then he makes a joke about it in such a way that it's just perfect. That's exactly what I want to hear,
Yeah.
He's a really good example of someone who knows how to deal with an audience.
Well, also to deal with a character, because that's what, like you said, it's about Trump every time. So he's learned how to deal with the Trump character, and how to
Yes.
interact with it and how to make fun of it and how to turn it into entertainment.
Yeah, he impersonates him. He does all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he has a lot of following, that's for sure. A lot of people like listening to his show.
Yeah.
Yep. Very true.
And that's different than like what you would call a series sitcom or a series drama, right? I mean,
it's a late night
that's
talk
an
show.
actual story. Yeah. I mean, that's so different
Yeah.
than what you guys are creating, which is an actual story.
But is it that
Right.
different? Because you just described how he does a great job of eliciting ways of looking at the Trump administration that you wouldn't think of. So he is doing character development. And he's doing plotline and storyline development outside of the way it's usually presented in the news. So is it all that different? I'm not so sure.
Right.
Very sneaky.
I think what would make this show really interesting, if you're going to use it to form your series, is to have each show focus on one or two characters, some aspects of the development of the developing plot or something. I don't know. That's what we were doing that a little bit in some of the previous shows.
Yeah, because
Talking about the
we were
actual-
creating
Yeah.
plotline.
The actual
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were creating the character, what would make them the way they are, why would they be that way, and
Yep.
therefore how would they respond in this kind of situation or that kind of situation.
And I have to admit, I mean, today's topic was mainly to serve me and Alex in terms of putting together our script to make sure that the script is effective.
Yeah. Right.
I mean,
To me, it was like kind
mea
of a
culpa.
behind-the-scenes talk. It was a
Yeah, that's
behind-the-scenes
it.
talk.
Behind the scenes. Yeah, exactly.
That's the perfectionist side of me coming out. I want to make this perfect. I want to make it so good that people are just going to say, "Yes, I want more of that. I want more." That's my goal. So good. Okay.
Yeah, well, I think you'll do that. You're doing that.
I think we are. I think we're in the middle of doing that.
Well,
So-
thank you, Tom.
So we've
We
got
appreciate your opinion.
absolutely we do. We appreciate your help because you've given that.
Well,
and that was some good insight.
I'm just chomping at the bit to get back into the story.
Then we're on the right
story
track.
is what makes the actual unfolding of the story is what makes it really interesting.
Yeah.
Because then you're
Right.
actually
Right.
you're back in the melodrama or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, not so much a melodrama because that's usually just black and white. But yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you want it to be a real drama, a real
Right.
or a
Yeah.
real comedy, drama and comedy.
Exactly.
Dramedy.
Two sides of
Dramedy.
theater.
Well, we got just about a minute left, so I need to do a little summary here. First of all, if you're not yet a subscriber to the podcast, maybe this one wasn't quite your cup of tea, but if you're still listening, it probably was. So thank you for listening all the way through. Become a subscriber by going to the website, loatoday.net. You can also find links in the description for this particular podcast for your device, so just click the right link. But either way, just make sure you sign up and subscribe and get all the episodes coming right to your smartphone, and you'll get the little notifications. Hey, the next episode has arrived. Very, very cool. And then once you've listened to each episode, as you're listening, share it on social media. Let people know so that more and more people can get their daily dose of happy. And I would be remiss if I didn't remember that Tom, of course, is a life coach and has his own unique contributions that he makes not only to us here on the podcast, but also to helping people in their private lives. Tom, how does somebody reach out to you?
Go to my website, which is youarejoy.com. The three words youarejoy.com. And then on my website, you can see a heading for sign up for a free coaching session. So it's a free half-hour coaching, and it usually turns into an hour. But if you have less time, then it's just a chance to check out what coaching would be like with me.
That's
And
great.
often I take people on a whole coaching session journey. And then if you want to sign up for more sessions after that, you can.
That's great. Great that you give them the opportunity to check you out first. That's fabulous that you do that. And Alex, I presume I've asked you about this last couple of days. I'm kind of guessing that there's really nothing new, but anything new where spoiler alert is concerned that we need to know about?
No, nothing new has come up recently except for the whole Jussie Smollett, debacle that's going on.
So you got some commentary on that then. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So good stuff. Okay. Great. Well, okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks for sharing. Thank you to Jacob and Jason for their commentary as well and their contributions. And thanks to our live stream audience and to our podcast audience. That's where the big numbers are anyway, the number of people listening on the podcast. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.